What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and it's time for League of Legends patch 11.16. Let's talk about it. I prepped this a week ago, which shouldn't have any problems with the accuracy of what I've done. But keep in mind, I'm human. I often, in watching it back, I tend to get 1 to 2 things wrong. So hey, just by the way. Also, by the way, one thing I've been doing, if you haven't seen it, is I'm now going to do it every week after, so we'll do it either Tuesdays or Wednesdays. The week after the patch goes live, I'm going to go over what we have from public data and talk about what effect this patch has had. That will also tend to coincide with what ends up being the patch lock date, more or less, for designers. Which means that, it'll also be like the benchmark where it's like, hey, by the way, at this point in time, they don't really get a chance to react anymore. It'll also line up with about the time when pro play starts in the patch. So a couple interesting things there. So hey, keep in mind next week, as soon as you're watching this roughly on release date, we'll have the results of patch 11.16. But let's talk about it. Go through the quick context here. All right, they're just saying they're buffing some various champions. Okay, they're just naming champions, so nothing too special here for the big rundowns. They're nerfing Diana because of her power level in iron through gold, plat through diamond, and then her ban rate in diamond to challenger and her pick and ban rate in pro play. My understanding is there is absolutely no way Diana is actually overpowered in plat to diamond. From what I have seen, her win rate is almost bang on 50%. Her ban rate might be a little bit high, but I am surprised to see this in Oracle data. Similar for Fiora. Fiora supposedly being nerfed because of literally every skill tier. Tahm Kench and Xin Zhao the same. My understanding is Tahm Kench, Fiora is not nerfed for pro. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pause and look things up. All right, we're back, even though I probably just teleported on your screen. So I went and spot checked. I didn't look at all of them, but Fiora has a 5% presence in pro play across 11.14, which is the patch that Riot has to react to in pro play. And Tahm Kench is a 20% presence across that patch in 11.14. This is, to be fair, in competitive leagues. I didn't do just LCK, LCS, whatever, but anecdotally, there's no way Tahm Kench or Fiora are nerfed because of pro play. Lee Sin, I don't think... Lee Sin's actually a little bit more reasonable. We'll talk about that one later. I looked at Diana. Diana in plat plus solo queue has below an average win rate. She's for the people who are playing her actually losing more games than she wins, and her ban rate's 17%, which is not extreme enough to be in platinum she's overpowered. So I am sad to see Riot has already inted away their here's why they're nerfing it. It's a one-time mistake. I'm not saying they're stupid, but Diana is not nerfed because of anything but pro. Fiora is not nerfed for anything but low to mid elo, and she's doing pretty well in solo queue. So this is understandable to do a win rate nerf here. Tahm Kench is in fact overpowered. I think the nerf is deserved. If there is one here, Xin Zhao is definitely I think literally #1 champ in pro, so it totally makes sense. And Ziggs is definitely overperforming. In bot lane, I'm totally down with more Ziggs nerfs because yes, he is a terror in bot lane. Cool to see buffs though. I think pretty much all these buffs look neat. Sivir is getting buffed specifically for crit builds because the only way to play Sivir right now is lethality Sivir. So that's kind of nice to see that be an option. Also, I'm a very, very big fan of the Karma and Sona change. I think they're really, really neat. That's really cool. Darkseal's getting nerfed, Redemption's getting buffed. I understand that they just throw items in systems, but Darkseal is a direct nerf and Redemption is a direct buff. There is no trade back here. All right, so fairly long, well, not that long of an intro, it's 4 minutes, but I paused and spent 5 minutes looking it up. So anyway, let's go on. Diana, yes, she is a popular jungle pick. She is powerful, especially in competitive play. That is true. So what's interesting is, from what I have seen, obviously pick rates haven't matched this, but let's think of Ziggs, for example, where Ziggs was not played as a bot lane until people realized he was a good bot laner, and now Ziggs is mostly played in bot lane, where before he wasn't, right? He was most played as a mid laner, and then eventually the internet caught up. There are other very, very good bot lane mages out there. If you, by the way, like the Ziggs freeload train, Seraphine, Karthus, and Swain. If you want to keep playing mages for elo, those are your 3. Just by the way, that's the list still. Veigar is pretty good too. All right. Anyway, so the point to say here is Diana is actually stronger win rate wise in mid. So to be clear, from the elos I spot checked, she is below average for solo queue, right? Asterisk for solo queue in the jungle. She's a below average solo queue jungler. This is just true. you could say that players are bad at her, or she's picked into bad comps a lot of the time, but like she loses more than she wins in the elos I checked. But she is the number 2 jungler in pro play behind Sinjo and Sinjo's permanent ban. So she's like the most picked, basically. So understandable to nerf jungle Diana. And if you're only going for pro play, mid Diana, I think is playable, by the way, but it hasn't been seen very much. But mid Diana is totally reasonable. Mid Diana is actually strong. So my only concern here, I don't think it's a huge problem, is if they do this nerf, and they are, right? They're nerfing exactly jungle Diana. And then they say, hey, actually, we want to buff her back up by like adding 10 damage to Q. Well, now mid Diana is OP and you have a problem. Whereas instead, I think they had the real estate because mid Diana is like slightly above average. They could have been like, oh, we're going to lower your, W damage by 5 or whatever, right? And it's like, well, we have dropped jungle Diana down a little bit. We have dropped mid lane Diana down a little bit. She's still like fine. Like she's still better than the average champion. The concern with that is I think it wouldn't change pro play pick ban very much. So that's an understandable point. Anyway, I think this will do a fair bit to try to push people around. Anyway, here is the math. So here is the AoE damage. Here's the single target damage. This is essentially taking her base AD and normalizing to what is your damage. So this is just like how much damage does her overall slash deal. This is how much damage is their overall slash deal. This is just like the damage on the tooltip multiplied by 3 versus multiplied by 2.5. So of course the damage is always 17% lower, right? You lose 1/6 of the damage in the passive. So, when you're hitting chickens or you're hitting small krugs, you're hitting, the side wolves and whatnot, because right, those are the camps, right? Red, blue, and gromp are all single target. Here's how much damage you're losing on small chickens, on small wolves, on the sides of krugs, things like that. Okay, and then here is the damage per auto attack on your main target, right? So this is now saying, okay, well, let's go back and then go forward again. I'm going to auto attack 3 times, and then that's going to pop my passive. Okay, let's take that whole number, divide it by 3, and then let's do that thing again. So this is basically 1/3 of this plus her base AD is what this number is. 1/3 of this plus her base AD, right? So it's still down by 10, still down by what, 125 at the end? Yeah. So right, this is the difference. So yeah, what this means is, wait, am I trolling? I don't think I'm trolling. Whatever. Let's pretend it is math right. I'm pretty sure it's still close to accurate. If I'm being stupid, I'm being stupid, but whatever. I think we're okay here. Either way, this is roughly what you're looking at. All right. This is. Hold on. I'm gonna pause again and double check the math. Okay. Yeah, I'm stupid. So we're back. Hopefully we'll do better. As I said, there tend to be 1 to 2 mistakes per video. This is one of them. Instead of doing, so this was this number, right? And instead of doing plus 3 autos, it was plus 1/3 of an auto, which is dumb, obviously. But yeah, here is actually how much single target damage you get from 3 auto attacks on Diana, right? You get 3 times her auto attack damage plus this passive, which the reason I screwed it up and I was doing this at 2 in the morning a week ago, was this was already multiplied by 3 because it was a 3 times modifier, because that's the minion damage or the monster damage modifier. And so my brain just like short circuited. So her damage to raptors, not counting Q and W, the small raptors, is down by 1/6. Her damage to her primary target, when just auto-attacking red buff or auto-attacking blue buff or auto-attacking, Gromp or Big Krug or whatever, is down 4% in the very early game, right? So very, very little time is actually lost, comparatively in her early jungle clears. It matters more late game because the passive damage scales up really, really quickly, which I think is kind of neat. But here is the numbers corrected. Here is her single target auto attack damage across 3 autos, and it is down again 4 to 10%. The more ability power you get, the more this goes back up to mattering. But the more you cast Q and W, the less this matters. Anyway, these are the numbers. All right, let us move forward. Fiora is slightly strong in solo queue. Definitively not nerfed for pro play. No reason to think that. But apparently, especially in the higher levels of play, she is winning a lot of games. So I'm assuming, it's like a, plat plus diamond plus win rate kind of thing, which sure. It might be that she actually crossed Oracle bounds before other top laners. Like, I know I have a friend who pretty consistently complains about Camille. But if you're triggered the, hey, this is too much win rate, at a certain elo before Camille, then okay, Fiora's on the list. Certainly she's not absurdly popular. She doesn't have a really high ban rate, but if she has the high win rate, she has the high win rate. Like, what are you gonna say? Right? There's an oracle for catching the alarm bells for a reason. Either way, it is a mid to late game nerf to Fiora. 0 to 2 seconds added to her E max. Her second max, which is E. So yes, for the first few levels, there's absolutely no change. Her laning phase is no different. But yeah, you're adding. I guess we should actually make these show decimals. Oh wait, no, these should show decimals. That's what we got wrong. Sorry, I'm being kind of silly, but there we go. There's our decimals. It's like, okay, it is a not a very large nerf through sort of the mid game, but then okay, as you get towards max rank, it's actually a pretty big difference. This can definitely change your dueling power quite a bit. This is useful for killing turrets. This is useful for just knocking out minis a little bit faster when you're trying to push down the wave. So yeah, this will have some effect. It's a pretty small nerf. I think this is just meant to be like a 1% win rate nerf. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. But yeah, okay, small Fiora nerf. She'll still be on the strong side, and that's fine. Next up, a couple of small buffs to Jarvan. Cool to see that they are buffing fighter builds. I think Jarvan is definitely more interesting as a fighter than as a raw tank. I think he's a pretty cool dude, even though he dunks me sometimes. But 10% more current health damage. 25% more, plus 2% current health damage. And then a pretty decent AUD ratio increase on the R as well, which is actually pretty nice. So here is Jarvan's passive auto. This is using Jarvan himself as our example target. You can see it's actually a pretty meaningful amount of damage. Now, of course, this is assuming that whoever you're hitting is at full HP. That's not always true, sure. Worth noting that this damage is actually capped against all targets, not just monsters. The required health for this is something to the tune of like 5,000, I think. So it's not really that realistic that you're running into this damage cap against champions, but against a late game Shogun or Scion, it is theoretically possible. Of note, I believe the damage dealt is actually max health against minions. So this is actually very helpful in last hitting minions as Jarvan. Should be really no problem to like last hit minions in a turret and whatnot. So this actually does matter a fair bit for like lane Jarvan. This does help his last hitting in actually pretty reasonable amount. It's there, right? Like having good CS is useful. Getting extra CS that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise is useful. So generally, pretty big fan of this. Yeah, I like this. I just think it's cool. It's an interesting part of Jarvan's kit. Glad to see it buffed. As far as the ultimate AD ratio, I could have done a like scaling AD chart. I did not. Ultimately, looks pretty good. As far as I can tell, his best builds are already Gore Drinker or Stride Breaker. So you're probably still going to be going, Gore Drinker, Sterix, GA as like the default fighter build. So small buffs there. More damage for Jarvan. And as far as I can tell, he's decent. Like he's pretty playable. So if this is like a 1.5% win rate buff, Jarvan is a really good pick for the next patch. He should be fine overall. Like realistically, Jarvan is a completely playable, totally viable jungler. He is stronger now. Like he is going to be a strong jungler that is worth playing. So next up, we have some small buffs to Jhin. I'm not sure his win rate data. Apparently, he's been feeling lackluster. Sure, whatever. 10 damage on W and 5% higher AD ratio on R. Keep in mind, W has a total AD ratio attached to it. We're going to do the standard 10 AD per level as well to look at the rest of the math. And yeah, of course, it is an early game buff. It's an ability that you max second. Nothing really surprising here in the findings, right? It's 10 flat damage, which means more in the early game and less in the late game. As far as Jhin ult was concerned, because again, we're buffing the ratio, the more AD he has, the more AD he buys, the more damage he's going to deal, and, kind of similar numbers, right? 5 to 10% more damage than the W, and, okay, more like actually just 10% more damage than the R. As you can see, about half the damage is being carried by the AD ratio, since this has been buffed by, 25%? 25% of 20 is 5%. So, a good portion of the damage of the ultimate is just from the AD ratio. Jhin may be actually buying more AD than this. Keep in mind that as he buys attack speed, the percent bonus AD conversion gets bigger as well. So this is actually undercounting what Jhin would actually be getting in a real build compared to someone like Kai'Sa, who's just building attack speed because attack speed's good, but is getting AD as well, and we're scaling that. Jhin is kind of double dipping there and getting more AD ratio. So this is undercounting a little bit. It is a pretty big damage increase. Jhin should be in a pretty good spot. Okay, next up is a very small scale, I wouldn't even call it a rework, but a small scale update to Karma. So no longer gets Cooldown reduction on her passive from auto attacks. Now it's just from her abilities. Did not put that into a table. I don't think it's terribly important, but essentially, this is still the idea that hey, top Karma against melee champions gets to land auto attacks and gets her mantra back up sooner. So now if it's really ability only, we can keep skewing towards support. I think Riot seemed to be really, really, really. Um, here's I've seen this brought up before on Reddit, so I'm going to talk about it here again. Um, Riot is not opposed to flex picks. Like Aurelia right now is playable top and mid just fine. Karthus is viable top mid jungle. Um, Talia is good in jungle and support. I'm not sure what she's like in mid lane. But like there are a lot of champions who are flexible, and that's fine. It's actually fine that champions are flexible. I mean, they've specifically been buffing top laners to be like passable junglers like Darius and Mordekaiser or whatnot to like add some more champs to the pool to, maybe help autofill top players play the jungle or whatever else, and whatnot. They don't have a problem with that. They have a problem when a champion being a flex pick means they have to nerf the hell out of the champion to the point where it's not even viable in solo queue anymore, which is a place that, for example, Karma lives. Karma has a garbage win rate basically everywhere because, well, she's a pro play flex pick. They don't want 100% pick ban on Karma. She has to have a 47% solo queue win rate. So the options are, because Karma mid isn't popular and Karma top isn't popular, so solo queue players aren't clamoring to play Karma top, but support players are like, hey, it'd be nice if I could play Karma if she wasn't a garbage can. It's like, well, cool, then Riot can nerf the flex pick potential, so that pros would only play her in support instead of in mid, and then she can have a normal win rate and be a playable champion for the 100-something million people who play solo queue and normal games in League of Legends. It's like, that's why. As far as I can tell, that's why. So I will, generally speaking, as long as these things are actually happening, I will pretty heavily defend the idea that Riot should be, nerfing lane karma if it's essentially ruining support karma. Okay. So auto attacks don't give you reductions, but spells do much more heavily in the early to mid game. Worth pointing out, again, this caps at level 11. So for the first 10 levels of the game, which by the way, support Karma spends a lot longer amount of her time as than top and mid Karma. Support Karma is going to feel this more, so I like the idea of what this buff does. Next up, Inner Flame is down 20 to 0 in damage. The cooldown has been stretched out to where it's much more worth maxing, and the mana cost is cheap. This is kind of interesting, right? Because this, it is obviously an early game laning nerf to Karma, and obviously the mana cost is also lower. So let's talk about Karma basic Q damage and basic Q cooldown. Right, the damage is nerfed 1 through 8. The cooldown is nerfed 1 through 4. And then it's better from here. I would argue maybe rank 4 Karma Q is actually a better ability. 0.5 cooldown for 5 damage is probably a positive trade, especially with the mana cost being lower. So, real argument that the nerf is only 1 through 6. But I would say it's pretty definitively nerf 1 through 6, and it's a buff 7 plus. Okay, first 6 levels are a nerf to Karma in lane. And this, to be fair, also hurts Karma support, right? This lowers her lane bullying quite a bit, which is pretty relevant, I would say. I know right now the correct skill order for Karma support is 3 points Q then max shield. You can do 2 points Q then max shield if you really want to get the shield soon, but it allows you to max shield by 10. And this pushes you more towards putting those last few points in Q because you're getting more cooldown and you're getting more damage out of the rank up. So we might go back to 5 points Karma Q. To be fair, again, 5 points Karma Q is objectively stronger than before, right? The cooldown is 1 second lower. The mana cost is cheaper. There's a reason to do this and be a bit more of a damage champion as Karma support. That's a possibility, just a thought. Again, mana cost a bit cheaper. Okay. Overall, I would say this still feels like a slight nerf, but not a huge one. But the damage is getting compensated somewhat by saying, hey, but RQ is viable. So the other half of this is they're basically saying, hey, by the way, we're trying to get rid of just using R plus E as the only Karma combo. Let's try to make R plus Q better. So the initial damage is going up by 15 to 45 if I have my math right. So the explosion damage is, I believe, unchanged. It's just whatever the number is on Mantra. I could be slightly wrong, but I'm pretty sure about that one. So what is RQ damage just on the first half, right? The first big hit? Well, it's slightly weaker at rank 1 of Q. It's the same at rank 2 of Q. And then, it's quite a bit higher. And pretty substantially so, right? Again, the cooldown is lower. The base damage is the same. But the Mantra damage is going much higher. So, yeah. Hey, more reason to go into RQ. Now, what's interesting is This doesn't really, I would say, nerf flex pick karma that much, honestly, because at the end of the day, if you're going to play top karma, yes, your landing phase is getting weaker, and there's an argument that this change list here does in fact nerf karma top, but you have to keep in mind that the Q is 10 mana cheaper. You do get rank 4, earlier on than a karma support, and our Q is going to be used more often as top and mid karma. So there's a real case to be made that like these changes in isolation, just these changes, may in fact be a buff to karma top and karma mid. Whereas I think they are somewhat lesser of a buff to karma support. Like this specifically is, I think, definitively more of a buff to karma solo lane than karma support. I think this is more of a buff to karma support and more of a nerf to karma in lane. Then the big change here is the inspire is shield is changing. So the base shield is going up 0 to 20. So that can matter, right? Because if you are going to go shield max karma, 2 points Q to max E, you're going to get there pretty quickly, and that's going to be reasonable. That said, the move speed is no longer getting buffed on rank up, so it's just shield value. So, okay. We read both lines of text. Okay, shield max is weaker. Additionally, the buff to nearby allied champions is it's still 30% of the total shield. And by the way, the total shield is stronger, so that's a little bit better. But the move speed gain, instead of providing 40 to 60% move speed, is providing 12% move speed. So so I'm not certain, right? I could see either way. It's actually probably, you know what? I'm probably dumb here. But based on the wording here, right? It says 30% of the shield's amount, and then 100% bonus move speed, which I assume is 100% of the bonus move speed, because I don't believe you gave teammates 100% move speed. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm stupid, but as far as I could tell, that's not the case. So it's 30% of the 40% flat move speed. So it's 12% move speed to your team, which is, it's there, but it's not a lot. This is a huge, huge, huge nerf to Mantra Shield. This is a massive nerf to Mantra Shield. I'm going to actually guess this overall change list is a nerf to Karma. It will take players some amount of time to figure out what they actually want to do with the skill order, because RQ did get buffed. Again, it got buffed pretty meaningfully. But yeah, here is the move speed. Here's the shield difference. Again, it's not that bad. It's definitely quite a bit better. If assuming you're just maxing it seconds straight up, it's better from level 8 onwards. But the move speed provided is definitely a little bit worse. And then if you mantra the shield, here you go. It's a little bit stronger, 5%. Right, not a lot. It's not that big of a deal. And the move speed to your teammates, oh boy, is it a lot less. And by the way, this is I'm using different data tables here. This is a little bit silly. So this is how much move speed. I'm just double checking that I'm doing this what I think it was. Yeah, okay. So this is what is your total move speed before and after, right? So I go from 160 to 140, which is a 12% lower move speed. I go from 140 to 112, that is 20% lower move speed. So that's that math. I go from 160 to 112, that is 30% lower move speed. Now certainly moving 6% faster to moving 12% faster, that comparison is obviously much more stark. This is 1/5, but there's also a case to be made for measuring it this way, and it's this. Up for debate, but there you go. Alrighty. So Lee Sin is getting a small nerf to W to sustain. This is still meant to nerf lane Lee Sin. Now what's interesting is Lee Sin, I don't believe, needs this for solo queue. Like, he is a competent jungler. He is fine. He is good. He's totally playable. Lee Sin's not in a spot where he's getting a crappy win rate in jungle because of flex queue, or sorry, because of flex pick power, because of pro play. That said, he is somewhat dominating pro play, and so Lee Sin, and they actually said this in the legend up top, Lee Sin is getting nerfed because of pro play. He is has a very high pick and ban presence because he's still grabbed as a good duelist in lane, really good sustain. So they lower the sustain, and ultimately W is something that you shouldn't need a ton of in jungle, because you get a bunch of innate sustain in the jungle in the first place. You're going to feel this a bit less. That said, one of the more common skill builds for Lee Sin, some people do. Actually, it's not that common. Some people do W max Lee Sin in lane. In some matchups, I think it's probably his least common skill order, but you would feel it less if it was this. So here is the Omnivamp before and after. Obviously, it's much lower in the early game. That said, when you see numbers like this, all you're really getting out of Omnivamp is some level of health regen, which you care about the champion's base health regen at that point. Right? That's a different factor. So it's I could have easily seen this nerf actually going the other way, and they nerf base HP 5 instead. Because if you're making lane Lee Sin spam W to sustain, it's not up as often to shield important skill shots or to juke away from ganks, and they could have actually forced lane Sin to spam W more often. And nerf base HP 5, and just like who like jungle cares, I would say less about base HP 5 than a mid laner does. Doesn't matter, it's whatever. This is going to do a bit of, it's a bit of a sustain nerf. Jungle Lee Sin shouldn't need it, but we'll see. We'll see if he gets hit. You max W second on Jungle Lee, and yeah, he's going to be at this for a while, right? Until level 8. Okay, Lulu gets a 1-second cooldown increase on Whimsy and a 10 to 0-second increase on Wild Growth. So this is definitely a solid win rate. Moderate frustration. Solo Q nerf. She's obviously not taking over pro play very much, but they're nerfing the frustration, which is, hey, the cooldown on the crowd control, the cooldown on the saving / crowd control. Keep in mind, level 16 Lulu almost never happens, so you're mostly feeling this in the game, which obviously pre-6, you can't nerf the ultimate. Whimsy is interesting in that it is most commonly maxed second, but win rate wise, it is actually maxed first. With what seems to be enough sample to be pretty reliable that this is actually her best skill order, which is, by the way, way back in the day what I said to do in the spotlight, because I didn't really feel like back then you cared about the poke that much. Obviously, people eventually realized they should max shield because shield is good. But it seems like in a lot of the matchups where you're not really hard scrapping, you can just rely on just putting out the move speed and attack speed difference and, CCing people and just getting the value there. So there's maybe a case to be made. Maybe it's like actually 3-point shield into max W. I'm not sure, but this appears to be the case for Lulu, which, hey, even if that is true, well, that got nerfed arguably more, by a bigger percentage. Either way, small Lulu nerfs should still be quite good. Not a big problem. Next up is a project on Maokai. Top Maokai is roughly balanced, by the way. I know one thing I've been seeing is people saying that tanks aren't viable. As far as I can tell, is generally not true. Tanks just have fairly flat win rates. The tanks are pretty tightly clustered around balanced win rates. You have some champions like Malphite, who have very, very sharp matchups, where Malphite sees a lot more play in games where like you see a Jax or you see a Jace. But similarly, so people blind Malphite and you see a lot more Sylas, which is, I think, the literal sharpest matchup in the game is Sylas Malphite. So he gets both sides of the equation, where he's got sharp advantages and sharp disadvantages. And those matchups are really overrepresented in Malphite's data. Sion right now, actually, to like use Sion as an example, the metagame does not favor Sion. If you look at the top 8 most played champions, I think 4 of them are negative matchups for him. 2 are equal and 2 are positive. So the champs people tend to play in solo queue right now are good against Sion. So Sion is not the metagame is bad for Sion because what people play just happen to be good into Sion. So Sion's not in a good spot right now. Because the metagame doesn't favor him, right? Set is popular and other champs that are good into Sion. Maokai appears to be doing fine. Maokai's win rate is completely passable. I think it's very slightly above average for top lane and solo queue. But worth noting that, there aren't any top lane tanks with a 52% win rate, right? None of them are there in just average games. So there's no top tier tank, but there are top tier fighters Tahm Kench, you could argue, actually is. Tahm Kench is actually very, very strong. And that's the really obvious counterpoint to there's no good tanks. Tahm Kench exists. But Orin is doing just fine. Maokai is doing just fine. Malphite has sharp matches, but those are very good for him. So I would generally argue against the idea that tanks are overall bad. I know there was a Reddit post about how I didn't see what he said, so I have no idea what he's saying. But I've been having a discussion with my friends around are tanks even good? And actually they're fine, is my understanding right now. You have champions like Gnar that really aren't pure tanks, but they fill that role a lot of the time. Anyway, top Maokai. So yeah, support Maokai is pretty OP. And what's interesting is people have actually gotten off of playing support AP Maokai and just playing support tank Maokai, and it's still very high win rate. So Maokai support is a champ people should be looking at for sure. But yeah, the AP sapling toss Maokai is still some of that pick rate and is a little frustrating. Ultimately, the goal is to try to buff top Maokai. Now, can they do it? Okay, so by the way, the original passive values were bugged. He was healing for less with max health. The numbers were off. It was 5 to 13 instead of 6 to 13. And it wasn't scaling properly. It was scaling linear instead of at the intended breakpoints. So yeah, what we're showing here is what it actually was. So right, it was 5 to 65 plus 5 to 13%. Now it's at flat values based on level. So what does this mean? And then sapling toss damage is down by a flat 5 and then a little bit on the AP ratio. Okay, so what does this mean for Maokai? So by the way, highlighting here are where the breakpoints exist. Right, put the line where the breakpoint's going to show up. Bam, you can kind of tell from the numbers, right? It's when it shows up. But hey, by the way, so Maokai in lane got nerfed, right? Level 1's the same, but wow, 2 through 5 are really rough. Now, it's up to you to decide if you think top Maokai versus mid Maokai got more harassed. Keep in mind, or sorry, top Maokai versus support Maokai. Keep in mind, support Maokai has to play against like Bard and Zyra and stuff, and top Maokai, if he's against Darius, just like doesn't play in the lane anyway. But if he's against, I don't know, Renekton, like how much is he getting poked, right? How much is he getting sustain? I don't know. You tell me. It could go either way, but whatever. It is worth pointing out, though, that the more Maokai levels, the better it is. Like, very clearly, level 11 plus, Maokai has way more sustain. And this is pretty meaningful, right? This is a pretty good amount of extra health. Keep in mind that the actual amount gained went from 30% max health to 15 eventually percent max health, right? From level 15 onwards, the max health scaling is higher. Actually, that's not even true because it's scaled to 13 by level. So at pretty much almost any point in time, probably from like level 9 onwards, maybe even level 11 onwards, the percent health scaling is higher. Not to mention just the flat values themselves. So, so not only is the baseline healing higher for late game Maokai, but the percent health ratio is also heavily increased, which is also going to be a big gain. So, just kind of pointed that out that, this is a late game durability buff to Maokai for sure. This is really going to be felt by top lane Maokai. Around here, it's pretty flat. Again, we're looking at, okay, yeah, a certain breakpoint at exactly level 8 is 10% down, but you're looking at, plus or minus 5% for the most part here. Like this is a wash, this is a buff, and this is a nerf, right? So early game nerf, mid game equal, late game buff. This screams solo lane buff to me, right? This screams solo lane buff. Like, okay, you're getting 22 less health per sap magic at level 4. Suffer through it and go feel better in team fights, right? That should do pretty well overall. Next up is sapling toss. So here is the baseline E damage. This is if you're maxing it first. This is if you're maxing it last. What's the difference? Not a ton. Again, here's your difference at level 9 versus I guess here instead. It's not a ton. This is if you are getting 15 AP per level, by the way. So looking at that difference here. If you're not building AP, you're really just losing 5 damage and that's it. 5 damage on your E is not a big deal if you're leaving it as, 1 wonder or not, it doesn't really matter because none of the rest of this matters. It like the percent health damage is no different. The flat damage is again just -5. So it's -5 flat and then minus a little bit on the AP ratio. Worth noting the AP ratio is still actually pretty trash. It's not that big of a deal. Right? This got nerfed by 1/7, right? Or sorry, 1/8. It got nerfed by 12.5%, and the nerf is 3%. This is with like a decent amount of AP. So really, the AP ratio is not doing a whole lot here, but it is weaker. Ultimately, kind of whatever. I think the passive changes were good. I'm actually a big fan of that. This isn't going to do a whole lot. It's fine. All right, so next up we have Nunu. So Nunu is getting 5 more move speed. He's also getting a reasonably higher AP ratio on his E. Now, Snowball Barrage is very odd from an AP ratio standpoint. There are 2 parts to the ability. There's the snowballs you throw, and then there's the, are you still in the circle? You've been rooted and take damage. And the root damage thing has a very low base damage and a very high AP ratio. And we'll talk about that briefly. So of course 5 move speed is kind of nice, but here is just the overall damage from throwing all your snowballs and hitting 1 target. With 15 AP per level, yes, rank 1E with just, stat shards. Pretty good damage, right? 158, 150 and change, like that's pretty good. You can see that even after the buffs, the baseline AP ratio on Snowball Barrage is just not that good. Right, 480 ability power to double the overall damage. That's a really, really bad AP ratio. 480 is really extreme. But that's not really the full story of the ability. Still though, right, obviously pretty good damage output here. 678 is quite good. But here's what really happened. Right? Here's for real. Because this is now saying, well, I landed my snowballs, but then we did the, whoop, We rooted you all in place. And this damage barely goes up by rank up, but the AP ratio is absurd. So we gonna get the 15 AP per level. We look at our damage output here, and instead of being plus, actually this shouldn't really change any, right? We're plus 100. We are still plus 100 because we didn't change the base damages or anything of the E. But now it's worth noting, like, oh, yeah, we maxed this, and wow, it takes 290 ability power to double the full damage of landing with snowballs and then, landing the root at the end. Now, what's actually more interesting is in the real world, this number is even lower because you're not going to land every snowball chain on one target, assuming you land the root. Now, of course, you don't always land the root either, right? But assuming you land like 4 snowballs and the root, it's like 200 AP to double the damage of the ability, right? It really pushes up. Just like sort of note. But yeah, on, level 13, we're at what, 200 ability power roughly around here. This is an 800 damage ability. That is a lot, right? This is a lot of damage. This really does improve a fair bit. I did some quick checking on Nunu's primary builds. He doesn't build AP that often. Those builds aren't very high win rate either. AP Nunu appears to be the weaker build overall, but it is always fun to see, Riot kind of pushing the alternate builds. I have played against a few Rocket Belt Nunus. I've played against more tank Nunus, and indeed it is stronger, but it's cool that like people get to have fun with AP Nunu, and I get to have fun beating a weaker champion, right? Everyone wins here. So I'm a big fan of this, right? Riot does a pretty good job, I think, of actually doing a decent amount of getting some builds up there and remotely playable. So Shaco has a bunch of fixes here. This stuff is not hugely important. There's a bunch of stuff around wards, but the orange smoke VFX no longer appears from the enemy's point of view when casting Fog of War. So in 11.14, there were Shaco nerfs, and then 11.15, there was a bug fix that made the orange smoke poof show back up. So the 11.14 nerfs were, I want to say, like AP ratio changes and some move speed and whatnot, and it brought Shaco back to like I want to say like 51% win rate. Like he was strong, but he wasn't overbearing. When they added the orange poof, it dropped 2.5% win rate, and he was objectively underpowered. Now, I personally think Shaco deserves to sit in a spot that is objectively underpowered because he's a very, very frustrating champion, and I think you can just go be a Shaco main and, play a balanced and slightly weak champion, and it's fine. Just deal with it. I think that's okay. That's maybe my bias, but that's how I feel about Shaco. Like, Shaco's frustrating. Frustrating champions can tend to sit slightly weak and be okay. I don't want him at 40%, but like 49 is fine. Anyway, making a design goal, the design decision to say, hey, panning around for orange poofs is an XD. Understandable, I get that. But yeah, Shaco is a 51% win rate champion by reverting this bug fix nerf, which is, slightly strong, not terribly overbearing. He's in an okay spot. Next up is Sivir, and Sivir is getting W max improved. A higher total AD ratio as points in W go up. By the way, gotta point out, 90% AD ratio on Ricochet is very high. That is really, really substantial damage. Keep in mind the W can crit. It's powerful. So this is just taking her base AD and then saying, okay, how much damage does the bounces deal? Of course, it's a buff from level 8 onwards. Of note, though it's not very popular, the skill order isn't very popular. Lethality Sivir is actually best served playing E max second to get a lower cooldown and more mana restore on Spell Shield, because she's not using Ricochet anyway, because Lethality just Q spam Sivir is playing out of range. She doesn't need to auto attack because she's just playing it at Shock Blast range on a 5-second cooldown or whatever. So she's not actually using Ricochet very much. This will still be an objective buff to Lethality Sivir because it's a tool that she has, and it will be stronger. So Lethality Sivir is going to be very, 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 very good next patch. It's already very good. It'll still be very good. She's worth playing. She's very strong. This is a larger buff to crit Sivir, where Ricochet is a larger portion of her budget. And again, the fact that it does crit means this should arguably be doing more, like ability per ability, should be doing more damage for crit Sivir. I think she's going to need bigger changes in this down the line to get more balance. It's probably going to be a bigger push towards, I don't know, raising her attack speed. Maybe even her range goes up by 25. I know that would feel really bad. I know Riot really likes having unique attack ranges because it helps champions feel different. And attack ranges are one of the few ways you can get it to really, really feel different. So I know they're pretty loath to do that. Like Viego, for example, like part of the design goals when August was making the champion was um, like he wants Viego's attacks to feel different. One of the ways you do that is he has more range with his long sword than other champions. Um, the fact that every ability hit like is a double strike. Like the attacks feel different on Viego. The way he hits minions, he like goes and hits everyone uniquely. Like Jarvan barely does that, but Viego like really does that. And it's like, oh, I landed a Q. Oh, time to go dance and hit everyone, right? So I think that's cool. So I'm not saying that they really need to buff Sivir's attack range. I'm not saying it's actually what has to happen, but we're still gonna have a problem where Lethality Sivir is the best Sivir, and Lethality Sivir is objectively getting buffed in this patch. So we'll see what happens. Next up, I think it seems really cool. A mini rework to Sona's passive mechanics. So instead of the old change where your costs were extreme, but you got mana back if you hit a champion, which by the way, the shorthand is 25 mana cheaper, but you don't get a 30 mana refund. So as long as you hit an ally less frequently than 83% of the time, I believe, 5/6, this is a buff. Now, if you got them every time, then it's a nerf. So, hey, by the way, we'll see where that moves. Okay, great. So that's the mana cost changes. That's the mana cost changes for every single one of these. It's all the same. Okay. Instead, she gets a new entire pass. So instead of this mana thing, she gets Accelerando. Okay. So by getting Accelerando, she gets 0.5 non-ultimate ability haste, which I, as my heuristic, by the way, am going to graph at 2/3 of the value. I'm going to say my catch-all for a champion is ability haste, is 1/3 of the ultimate and 2/3 of your other abilities. That your power budget is 1/3 in your ultimate. I think that's about fair. It's a made-up number, but it lines up with data that's bouncing around. Okay, so she gets 0.5 non-ultimate ability haste per stack, up to 120 stacks, aka 60 non-ultimate ability haste, which again, if we're taking 2/3, is 40 haste, which is, I want to say, 1,000 gold. Because I believe I'm pricing 10 haste at 250. I believe that's where the numbers line up in my stuff. We can do it real quick. You can say, hey, what's 10 times haste? And yeah, 250. So if this is, if this is, if this is 40 ability haste, it's 1,000 gold. Now there's an asterisk here because there's other nerfs down the line. But okay, cool. But it's worth noting that like you're stacking this from the very beginning of the game, right? Did you all invade and use your Q at level 1? Well, you invaded, you landed two Q hits, you just got 1 ability haste for your Q. It's not a ton, it's there, it exists, right? Okay. Now then, once you have fully capped it, next time you land a bolt of Q or a bolt of W, instead of getting more haste and stacks, you lower your ult cooldown by 1.5 seconds per stack, which means 3 seconds for the Q, right? If you get 2 bolts in enemy champions, which is not always going to happen, but it's going to happen sometimes. Each time you heal another injured ally, so is my lane mate hurt at all? I hit W. And it's worth pointing out, by the way, this is actually incentivizing you slightly to like not put more points into W. Because if I'm just going to spam it to heal, I kind of don't want the price to be higher. I want to just get my Accelerando stock for 80 gold. And a little bit here at the Q as well, but I mean, this is kind of not realistic. You don't get any stacks for hitting E. So each time you heal another injured ally or prevent at least 25, I assume, per ability rank from another ally with the Aura shields. So I don't know if you can get this 5 stacked 4, because it's another ally, right? Heal another injured ally. So W does not stack in solo lane. Q only stacks half as fast in solo lane. This is, I think, the much more elegant design of, hey, you're a support, stop being a top lane flex pick. Because it really was, I think, ruining a lot of solo queue because of pro play. Like, these changes are exciting. I think design-wise, they are really clean, right? I mean, this whole thing felt like trash, right? It felt really bad. It was a cudgel, and it certainly did the thing, but this was clearly not elegant. Now, I still will defend. I don't mind monster damage mods. I think the jungle is its own beast, and monster damage mods are fairly elegant. the like hidden ally mana refund was far less elegant, and this is just more interesting anyway, right? It's some actual fun gameplay for the Sona. Um, uh, all right, and then yeah, this is just again 25 mana cheaper. You don't get the refund. Okay, so here's the interesting part though. Um, she no longer has basic ability cooldown reduction. She no longer has baseline ability cooldown reduction via the R passive, which I recall correctly was like 10, 35, 60%. So 10% obviously not very much, 25% is quite a lot, 60% is a ton. It was really, 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 really short cooldowns. So 10, 25, 60% base cooldown versus 0 to 60 ability haste on those same abilities. Okay, which one's better? And real quick, and oh yeah, by the way, now the R will hit minions and monsters and deal damage to them. Okay, wait. Okay, great. So I want you to try to guess how meaningful this is, right? Well, here's the W cooldown from before. If you buy, and you're choosing W because W has a 10-second cooldown. So yeah, 10, 25, 60 is actually the math, by the way, unless I typoed, which I don't believe I did. So obviously, is a very, very, very big deal early on. Or sorry, it's a very, very, very big deal late game. If you don't get stacks for some reason, you go to level 6 with 0 stacks, you've never landed a Q on an enemy champion, you've never landed a W, this is how much you stand to lose, which is quite a lot. But assuming you do get a bunch of stacks, now keep in mind, 1 through 5, you're not going to get 120 stacks instantly. Of course not. But it's worth noting that I think it's realistic to definitively have this fully stacked by level 15. So I would say pretty much for sure, and actually by level 11, right? Because this is land, a combined 120 ally heals and Q damages. I think this shouldn't be too hard. This seems reasonable to do. So this feels like, a definitive. It's undebatably a buff 1 through 5. It is, I think, undebatably a buff 6 through 10, and it is almost certainly a buff, I would say, 11 through 15. I think that is almost certainly true. And by the way, like, let's say we only got, 40 haste, still better. Let's say we only got 35 haste, still better, right? So at 70 stacks, it's still better. 70 out of 120 stacks, it's still better at rank 11 or level 11. So realistically, in any realistic scenario, you don't have to go to like what, 33 stacks? Yeah, cool. At 33 or 32 stacks, 31 stacks. Oh, we're going the wrong way. Yeah. Yeah. So 33, 34 stacks, right? As soon as you get 68 stacks, I know, if only it was one higher. Too bad. This is better. And this is so realistic, right? To get that many stacks at this point in time, if you're playing support Sona, that this seems totally reasonable, totally good to do. And so Sona is objectively buffed 1 through 15. Sona is objectively buffed levels 1 through 16 through this analysis. Obviously, yes, at level 16 and beyond, you lose that little bit of hyperscaling, and that matters. But wait, and you can see, here, let's scroll down right here. You see this? You see the very bottom of the screen? But Phreak, you're lying to me. Phreak, you're lying, because Sona builds ability haste, right? The old Sona mechanic was base production, base CDR, which was multiplicative with ability haste. That's true. That is true. It's multiplicative with ability haste. And ability haste, right, is additive with ability haste. So Phreak, you're lying to us. It's not really a buff. So before I scroll down, I want you to tell me, at what point is it actually no longer a buff for Sona? Right? And I looked, by the way, at Sona's most common build and said, okay, you get Moonstone, you get like Staff of Flowing Water, you get cooldown boots, and you get like an Ardent Sensor or a Putrifier or something. Basically, all these things all have like 15 ability haste or whatever. And so the math works out to be 75. Whatever the math, like, I trust that I did like the actual calculation, and we ended at 75 haste for like a pretty much full build Sona, right? Boots, mythic, item, maybe even another item afterwards, I'm not sure, but 75 haste was like a reasonable large build Sona. So I want you to tell me, with 75 haste in your item build, does this become a Sona nerf instead? Obviously, this is just this stuff, we don't really care, but it's still an improvement. Again, first 5 levels, no contest. First 6 levels, not going to be a big problem. And then, okay, sure. If at exactly level 11, you haven't fully stacked your passive yet, which I truly don't know how fast this goes. Like, I haven't played New Sona, but if you ever do get to max stack passive, it is, once again, better than the old rank 2 ult passive. Yes, it's weaker at 16 plus, but let's be clear, 16 plus is not a common spot for Sona to be in. And at the end of the day, even though this is true, well, guess what? You reduce your ultimate cooldown by 1.5 seconds each time you would gain Accelerando. So at not only do you have shorter basic cooldowns at levels 11 plus, not only do you have that for free, from levels 1 up, your basic cooldowns are shorter, but not only that, you also have a shorter ultimate cooldown. And your punishment is sometimes your abilities cost 5 more mana. This is really definitively a massive Sona buff. I think she is going to be incredibly overpowered after the patch. I think she is going to be the standout OP pick on the patch and is probably a freeload train. There's a possibility that Sona gets hotfix nerfed. I don't think it's going to be that extreme, but I think she's going to be outstanding. And I can be wrong. I've been wrong about stuff before, but as far as I can tell, she is definitively great. So next up, we have Tahm Kench. And what's amazing is because 11.15 was 3 weeks long, I kept thinking this nerf was already in the game, but it hasn't been yet. Tahm Kench has been full OP for a while. And so he's losing 4-0 base damage of his passive, which goes into his auto attack and his Q. And his Tongue Lash has 5 less healing on it. So here we go. Here is the passive auto attack damage difference. Here's the Q damage difference. 5-ish% in the early game, tapering down to 0. Okay, here's the heal at 80% health. Obviously, it's always going to be down by 5, but how much does it matter if you're 80%? That's actually still a pretty meaningful portion of the heal. When you're really, really low, it's a much lower portion of the heal. Still matters. It's definitely a Tahm Kench nerf. Tahm Kench does much better in the early game than the late game. I think he's still going to be very good. Still going to be very viable. Just a bit less overbearing, but definitely a strong champion. Next up is Vladimir. They are buffing the AP to health conversion. They're buffing the health to AP conversion. So the thought is, if you are playing like full squishy high damage Vlad, you don't necessarily care about the bonus health at the end. But if you are playing more bruisery, like you are going Cosmic Drive and things like that, then maybe it's that. So anyway, if you're getting plus 15 AP per level, here's how much more health you have than before. It's not a lot, right? At max level with 270 ability power, it's 2% more health. It's not doing that much. If you're buying 50 health per level, aka plus 900 health at level 18, the ability power you are providing is plus 7.5. This is not apples to apples, by the way. To be clear, right? This is your total health is up by 2%. This is not your total damage is up by 33%. So don't take this to really mean that the one buff is bigger than the other. But it's worth noting that the health to AP conversion has gone up by a third, and the AP to health conversion has gone up by a seventh. So buying AP got buffed by less than buying health did. So yeah, right. That is where the math is going, right? Buying health got buffed by more. Okay. Next up, Xin Zhao, small nerf, 3 base AD. Here you go. Pretty easy data table. Xin Zhao has been my permaban for a while. After the nerf, we'll see. But yeah, definitely a strong champion. One of the absolute stalwarts of pro play. Really high win rate in solo queue as well. Definitely needs to be nerfed for every lane of play. So here we have Ziggs. Ziggs definitely is too good of a bot laner. They revert the nerf in the previous patch because they didn't really actually nerf him the way they wanted to. So they're instead trying to find a way. This is actually, I think, a pretty good way of doing it, of trying to nerf Ziggs bot. So, of course, Ziggs mid gets more XP than Ziggs bot does. So, what if we nerf an ability max second, which Ziggs mid can overcome that hurdle sooner than Ziggs support. So here is the damage before and after. Again, at level 10, it's equal. At level 12 plus, it's better. And again, mid Ziggs gets level 12 faster than bot Ziggs, so that should shift that slightly. Okay, great. They could always do more with scaling overall. Something that I suggested a while back was upping Ziggs' mana per level. His mana per level is very, very low. So, doing a mana per level mana per level buff to, the sort of mage default of about 40 and I like that base stat changes, like mana changes. So that's a possibility because again, it's another thing that you can say. Well, levels matter. You can kind of go that way. They could do more stuff like nerfing Ziggs' base armor, making him more attackable by 80 carries. There's more stuff they can do. We'll see how much they go to attack this. The slow force also got nerfed from 30 to 50 to 10 to 50. That is a much bigger nerf. That's not going to be better, or it's not going to be equal to level 13. It's going to take a very, very long time. So let's talk about ways we can measure this. I guess it's kind of the same thing. The math is ultimately identical. But how heavy is the slow before and after? And a 30% slow becomes 10% slow, which is obviously 1/3 is good. And then at rank 5, it's the same number. Another way to cover it, though, is looking at the actual duration of the slow and saying, okay, if I take a relatively fast champion, which is either like someone with boots 2 and a zeal, or just like a baseline fast champion like Master Yi with a boots 2, both just get clean numbers because I just chose 450 400 move speed as clean numbers. It doesn't have to be that, but it doesn't really matter what you actually choose. The numbers aren't that far apart. I said, okay, how much distance do they lose? How much distance do they lose for the slow? Right? How much do I gain on them? Which I think is actually an interesting way of thinking about slows. Is how much distance am I denying? That's, I think, a really good way about thinking about slows, because it's kind of like a bad route, right? If I move at 400 units per second, and you slow it by 50% for 1.5 seconds, it's kind of like a 0.75 second long route, because in either way, I'm losing 300 movement. That's not really, really true. That's not because routes have their own situations going on, keeping them locked down so they can't dodge skill shots, and preventing flash and things like that. Like, those are all clearly relevant. But it is a way of thinking about it that I think can help sort of better visualize what's going on. And yeah, a 10% slow for 1.5 seconds is basically not a slow. This is going to be really, 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 really felt. And anecdotally, from my time playing Ziggs bot, Ziggs has a really good laning phase. He's really aggressive, and you can get a lot of damage out there. And like landing the minefield in the middle of the enemy champion, making them walk through like 4 mines, while slowed by 30%. For actually more like 2.5 seconds, because they're hitting mine and mine and mine and mine and mine and mine. You're getting a lot out of that. Your support's catching up, getting more damage in. It really does a lot. So Ziggs providing less CC to his lane teammate, or for his lane teammate, I think will do a lot to affect Ziggs bot. I think this is actually a very, very good nerf. Dark Seal gets less ability power per stack and loses more ability power on death. Dark Seal has basically been the just best starting item on almost every AP champion. And keep in mind, like, starting item. This is not coming into the game and being like, I got first blood, I'll buy Dark Seal. No. This is, what did you buy when you left Fountain? So before literally anything happened, Dark Seal has pretty much on every champion I've ever seen been like, oh yeah, it's the best option. It just has been dominating pick rate, win rate. Pretty much every AP jungler always buys Dark Seal on first recall. So now their buy is Dark Seal boots or Dark Seal Amp Tome. You just buy it because the risk is negligible. It's stat efficient basically, right? You're paying 350 gold for efficient AP and some health. It's just good, but the upside is I can get a 10 stack Dark Seal, and now I'm just overpowered. So I think it's actually a wise nerf. This item is definitely OP. It is unfortunate that I know we're in this metagame where people perceive may just not be good enough. I'm not sure that's really true. But that is perception, so this does come in at a slightly odd time. But again, Dark Seal is, I would say, objectively overpowered and worth nerfing. Next up, there is a redemption buff, pretty meaningful here as well. Cooldown is down by a quarter, which is pretty good. The healing's up by about a 1/9. Yeah, by a 1/9. So pretty nice buff here. So this is a good enchanter buff. Now, it doesn't have to be an enchanter buff, of course. It can be, you can buy Redemption Leona if you want. But it does scale off heal and shield power. Heal and shield power is a good stat. Enchanters often buy it. They can, go buy Moonstone and stuff. So, that can look really good. Banner City Clash coming in again. Hooray. Ranked updates. Third Q dodge penalty now exists. 12-hour lockout for your third dodge. And 10 LP. Okay. Friends leaderboards. Now you can complain or compare with your friends about who's good and who's not. That's going to be fun because I play a lot of premiums with friends. And then they're getting rid of finally the flex boosting abuse. So what was happening, for those who don't know, is people would get accounts. They'd get level 30 accounts, and then they would pre-made flex Q as 5 and turbo surrender. And they just turbo surrender at 15 forever and ever and ever. Actually, what they would really do is they would load the game at AFK. Like they would have a click bot and they would just AFK. As far as I can tell, I don't actually know, but like I've looked at OPGGs and this is what I've seen. So this is truly like me inferring from public data. They would just AFK in 5 appearances until they got to Iron 4 and Flex Q, and then that would be a boost account. They would now flex queue with someone, and they would boost that player to challenger. Because even though flex queue does really skew towards the higher elo of the group, you could still drag it down summit with the iron account. And so I like went and looked at the top of flex queue because I was curious because I was like climbing in flex queue recently. And most of the challenger accounts are either like, here's how to contact me so I can boost you, and here's someone who's like high diamond who is playing with these iron boosted accounts. Like they're like a mid high diamond solo queue player playing with boosters who are playing on iron accounts. So okay, if you reach master, you can't flex people below plat. Good, yeah, good. I am curious if there is a chance that because like some of us are like D3, D2 and flex, but some of us are like in gold and flex, and we just play together, whatever. There is a decent chance we can get hit with this, where one of our accounts gets into masters, and has to decay out, and then get back to D1, and then play some more. Unless we can get the rest of our friends into like plat 4. So I mean, whatever. I think this is still fine. Like again, master to gold 1 is a very big swing, and I get that, and I don't begrudge it, even though this has a real chance of affecting me as an honest player. And it's okay. I get it. I think this is still better for the game overall. I don't think there's any important bug fixes or QL changes. Some cool skins coming out, which looks nice. Alrighty. TLDR patch 11.16. Let's get into it. Diana being nerfed in the jungle. This is pretty meaningful for her AoE clear. This means very, very little for single target damage. Will nut you down slightly, but shouldn't mean a ton. Diana does not appear to be OP in solo queue. She's a big deal in pro, though. Fioret, mid to late game nerf, 2 seconds off rank 5E. Small hit there. Pretty high win rate, should still be pretty good. Jarvan should be a pretty big winner here. Doing the overall math for this, counting his total AD, counting, an example targets like base health, this is a 10% overall damage increase to your first auto bonk. That is a really big deal. Combined with a 30% higher AD ratio on Cataclysm, I feel like these are going to be very, very big Jarvan buffs. Jarvan is already like viable to good. He should be very good post-patch, and I think really worth considering. Jhin, I think, is also doing fine and doesn't really need a lot of help as far as I can tell. But 10 damage on W and a 5% higher AD ratio on R are pretty meaningful buffs, and Jhin should be in a quite strong spot. Karma is getting a pretty big set of changes. The ult's cooldown for letting abilities has been flattened to the level 11 part, which is more of a support buff than a top and mid buff. Autos no longer lower the cooldowns, so more of a nerf to top and mid, less to support. Q has a bigger incentive to be ranked up. 20 damage lower at rank 1, but flattened out at the end. Longer cooldown rank 1, but shorter cooldown rank 5. And cheaper mana cost. It's hard to know what this means exactly, but this feels like you are incentivized to max Q. Soul Flare damage is also up by 15 to 45. So incentivized to also RQ. So a really big deal for the damage output of Karma. Again, you are getting potentially, arguably, more Soul Flares, and the Soul Flares are stronger. So much more of a damage champion. Inspire, meanwhile, is no longer getting a haste rank up on, or a move speed rank up on the shield, but is getting more damage rank up on the shield. It's a little bit of a wash. It's not that bad. It's kind of whatever. But the big deal is that now you're only giving your teammates, instead of 40 to 60 move speed, you're giving the teammates 12% bonus move speed. Unless this is a typo and, it's 100% of the thing, but now it's just 30% bonus move speed. I'm not 100% certain, but based on the wording here, the move speed to your teammates got completely destroyed, and that's fine. She's not just the shield the teammate bot, and I think that's okay. Next up, we've got Lee Sin's Iron Will going down by 5% Omnivamp. Moderate nerf. Lulu gets 1 second on Whimsy and gets 10 to 0 seconds on Wild Growth. Pretty small, to the tune of about a 1% win rate nerf, but should be felt. But yeah, she's doing really well in higher elos and kind of crushing in proper duos, so okay, fair enough. Small nerf should still be pretty good. Maokai, this is good. I'll show the data table for this one. Basically, Sapling Toss is down, very, very little damage. It function doesn't matter. It's not a big deal at all. But let's talk about how much the passive actually mattered. Let's scroll up to here. There we go. Basically, Maokai's passive healing is nerfed 1 through 5, flat 6 through 10, and definitively stronger 11 through 18. This is basically a solo lane buff and arguably a support nerf. Okay, that's cool. But yeah, definitively a big late game sustain buff with stat magic. And by the way, the like way that Maokai fights in team fights, he's going to get this off several times in a team fight. This is not just like, well, okay, great, you buffed his level 18 health by 50. It's like, no. You're getting this off like 2 to 3 times a fight, and there's a really aggressive 15% max health ratio on it. You're getting a lot of healing off in fights. So this is a very big buff to top lane tank Maokai. He should be very good next patch. Nunu gets a pretty meaningful AP buff to his E. It's not his dominant build, but cool to see. 5 move speed also going to look pretty solid. Shaco getting a revert of the bug fix nerf from the previous patch. He was at in 11.14, which is what he's going back to. He was like a 51% win at champion, so he's going to go back to being like a bit strong. Seems okay. Sivir gets a pretty big damage increase on rank 2 plus of Ricochet. Lethality Sivir should still be the best Sivir, and in fact is going to be stronger. So hey, if you want some free low, play Lethality Sivir in mid and bot. It's really, really good. Sona gets a new look. Instead of getting a mana refund but more expensive Qs, the Qs are going, all of her spells are getting 25 mana cheaper, but is no longer getting the refund. But she now gets a new mechanic where she stacks up Accelerando by landing Q on enemy champions and healing and shielding her allies. This is still a sort of lever that is making her not a good solo laner, but a better support, and that's fine. I think it's just a better version. She's losing the basic ability cooldown reduction on her R, but the way the math works out, it's still fine. So if we scroll down to Sona, even with your build coming online, and you have 75 ability haste from 4 items, you still have lower cooldowns on your abilities up through level 15. Like, until you hit level 16, even with a very filled out build, you still have lower basic cooldowns. So this is pretty much definitively a buff to the champion, with one other note, which is that once you have capped this out at 60 extra non-ultimate ability haste, you then lower your ult's current cooldown by 1.5 seconds per stack, which is a lot. Like, this is a really, really, really big deal. Sona is going to be really, really strong post-patch. 4 to 0 damage off of Tahm Kench, Q, and auto attacks. 5 off of Tahm Kench's Q heal. Vladimir getting a small 14% buff to his AP conversion and a 33% buff to his health conversion. Overall, small Vlad buffs. Okay, cool. Xin Zhao loses 3 AD. That's fairly meaningful. Ziggs gets the mana reverted, but now E is nerfed at rank 1, and instead he has to max this, probably still maxing at second, to be clear. I don't think you're maxing it above Q. But this should try to skew mid versus bot Ziggs in the fact that, okay, rank 5 ability is better, so maybe, mid Ziggs can get there in time and he can feel like a stronger champion overall. Bot Ziggs spends a lot more time before, level 10, and so it's going to feel this nerf for a lot longer. And even the slow itself is nerfed until rank 5 at level 13, so try to nerf bot Ziggs, seems wise. Overall Darksteel nerf, overall redemption buff. That's the patch. It's a pretty good patch. I think there were a lot of things that were correct to do. Overall, should be fun to play. And it'll be fun to see what comes out of the fact that, Xin Zhao's not going to be overbearing in the jungle anymore. I think that was the biggest standout thing to me. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.